so far the response has been tremendous. The reviews are killer, especially overseas. England's really picking up on it. It's getting a lot of exposure over in Italy and Belgium and Germany. And as far as America, I got Las Vegas. I got a station out there playing it, and I got Winnipeg, Canada. And I'm just feeding the fires as best as I can. It's the people that are buying it are really digging it, which I got to be honest is surprising the heck out of me. So because it's kind of weird. This is something I always say. It's a cliche, but I just write what I know, and I don't sit there and pretend. Well, let's see. I think today I better write something in 7/8. I better write something that sounds like Rush. It just happens, and I thought what was really interesting about that review was that he was pulling out these bands that I would have never thought about. And nothing against the bands, of course. He's mentioning Soulfly, Hoobastank, and I'm like, this is odd. But he nailed some things. He nailed the Dimebag influence in the song "Go Berzerk," and which meant a lot. And I'm always gonna be reading people saying comparisons to Steve Vai, which is awesome, of course, and Joe Satriani, and I've been getting some Dream Theater compliments. What I have to admit is kind of interesting because there's no keyboards, there's no singing, so I'm kind of wondering where that whole vibe is coming from. I guess because they hear 6/8 time, oh, it's Dream Theater, but. I look at it this way: it's better than being compared to Poison, so anything is good. Johnny, the best way I could put it is because he had this certain degree of clout, I guess if you want to say, because he got the Grammy doing the Steve Martin album. I'll admit, in my eyes, it elevated him a bit more. Like, okay, he's on par with things. He knows what he's doing, and I'd known Johnny for a long time prior, so it's not like I walked into him, bumped into him off the street, and said, "Oh, you happen to be a Grammy-winning producer." It's we were friends for a while, and we still are, of course, and it was just one of those scenarios where he heard my previous works and said, "This stuff is good, but it's missing something, and I think I know what that something is." And basically what it boiled down to is he said, "I'm the first producer that will tell you no, do it again." Whereas in the past, and I don't want to knock anybody that I've worked with in the past because everybody's done tremendous work, they kept saying, "Oh, that's good, we'll keep it. That's great, that's awesome, we like that." And he just would sit back and hit stop and say, "No, you could do better." And there was this nice yin-yang push-pull thing, and there was never any knockdown, drag-him-out fight. And, for me, it was a pleasure. It was an absolute pleasure to work with him. I've known Joe and Ed equally for about 20 years apiece. Joe and I played in a band together a million years ago called The Quiet Zone. And the whole premise with that band was that we wanted to be, a direct answer to bands like Living Colour and Led Zeppelin. Ed I'd known for a long time, and we could never get our schedules to mesh, and then it was just one of those days where Ed just dropped me an email and said, "Hey, I got some free time, let's do this." All right, that's great. And I didn't have a bass player at the time, and as fate would have it, I got in touch with Joe just to talk about all things Quiet Zone, and the conversation basically turned to what went wrong with Quiet Zone, and we broke it down, and we said, okay, but what was right about Quiet Zone? Well, I said when this whole Steve Bello instrumental thing came into play, my attitude was it's Quiet Zone without vocals. If Quiet Zone didn't have vocals, I think it would have, maybe at the time would have gone somewhere, I don't know, because everybody's attitude, you need a singer, you need a front man, you need someone with lyrics, you need someone that people could relate to, and my attitude was I just want to play music, and it was just one of those conversations where Joe and I just said, let's get together over coffee. He picked up one of my basses and said, check out this riff, and I just looked at him and I said, dude, we have to be on the album together. And that was it, and it was very painless, very smooth, and before I knew it, I'm looking at Ed and Joe in American One Studios going, oh man, I'm doing this is great, and I miss doing this. The only thing that's really different, and it's going to sound like another cliche, is that we play a lot better. And I think, I can't speak for Joe, but I know speaking for myself, life has its way of getting in the way of things and makes you sit back and say, okay, I could have been a lot cooler when I was in my 20s, and you live and learn. And the great thing about playing with Joe is that the minute we started playing together, it was so natural, and it was it's just so right. And I don't want to sound like a Hallmark card, but it just worked. And people that had heard, rough masters, I'd just sneak little listens like, here, check out what I'm writing. And people are like, dude, everything just sounds perfect together. This is going to be a great album. And, people that have heard Joe prior to the recording of the album have said the same thing. Where'd you find this guy? And I'm like, I've known him for years. It's just finally now everybody's going to get to know him. And I'm proud. I really am. And I'm glad people talk about him more than they talk about me. I get sick of me too sometimes. So I want people to talk about Joe. All right, Joe DeMott. Thinking about as far back as the Twisted Metal album, that album came together in literally 2 weeks and recorded 9 hours on a shoestring budget. It was supposed to be for Iberness clinics. What I have noticed, though, is that with each album, it will take progressively longer and longer. It's something that I told myself as a kid years ago. Man, when I see bands like, I love Queen, don't get me wrong, Queen and Boston and Def Leppard, and man, why do these guys take forever to make an album? And now I see why. It's just, there's little things that just hinder you and stall you and slow you down, but it can't. I admit I can get defeated a little easily. I admit that, and just so you all know. And but I think what's so important is that I get the music out there, and I'm very fortunate that the people that I have played with over the years have helped me achieve that goal, and I always make sure that they get as much credit as I do. But as far as the length of time in between albums, I never planned that. Maybe there was some planning in one respect, like I'm just going to take a break. My ego got in the way, and I gotta walk away. I have to be Garth Brooks. You're never gonna hear from me again. And then 6 months later, hey Rob, I got a new album. So it'll never stop. Being a musician, I guess a songwriter in that respect is a curse and a blessing, because I can't be at Baskin Robbins and having a nice mint chip hot fudge sundae and thinking, got a song, and I have to go home and write it down. So it happens. Weird. Because I'll be honest, there's a zillion musicians out there. There's a zillion bands out there. There's people playing music that, for all intents and purposes, that's on the radio. And that's why in the beginning of this, when you said, how are the fans reacting and my friends reacting to the CD, and I'm pleasantly surprised, because it's not the kind of music that you can pop on and do dishes to. I think you have to sit down and really listen to it. And I don't think it's so intricate that you have to pull out a slide ruler and a calculator and an abacus and say, what is he doing on this riff? But I don't want to sound like I'm talking down to the people that I talk to online, because everybody's been tremendously supportive. But there are bands out there that you don't need to think when you listen to them. And I don't have to mention the band names, but for those kind of bands, they do a formula that works, and they can sell a zillion records or a zillion downloads or whatever. That's fantastic. And I have to do what's right. And I think people would sense a mile away if I'm doing something because I have to look cool, or because I want to make an extra dollar, or I'm trying to win a new friend over, and why is Steve going in this direction? I think it's expected now that I can only go this way instead of the same path. And I'm very grateful in that respect. I really am. And as far as the people online, it's an awesome feeling when somebody says, dude, where's the new album? It's the best feeling in the world. Not like, okay, I got better things to do than wait for your new album. Then I'd be like, I think I'll stop now. So again, I was surprised. I was very surprised because there's no vocals. It's a three-piece, and I'm sure what people liked about it, and it was not my intention, but I just run with it, is that it's got an insanely sticky, sweet, catchy melody, which I actually wrote upstairs on my couch, and my wife said, "That's good, keep it." So, hey, my wife helped me write the album, and the chord progression, I just said I'm just gonna play something silly over it in my eyes. And when people heard the rough demo, I didn't think I would get such a reaction. I really thought people would be like, if you had a singer, or maybe if you didn't play so fast, or if you stopped looking like Geddy Lee, maybe I'd buy your album, maybe if you poofed your hair, and, ooh baby baby lyrics. But I was really surprised that people went, "Dude, I can't wait for this album to come out." And I'm like, well, this is going to be the safest song on the album, just so you know. And what really blew my mind, I guess to answer the question in a roundabout way, is the people are liking the weirder tunes. They're saying, yeah, Surfing was really cool, it was a great foot in the door, but everybody's loving the title track. And I'm like, okay, I ain't complaining, and people are just digging the fact that we're getting away with playing a lot of notes. But, it is what it is. But as far as the video itself, I think it was because it was simple and there was some humor to it because Joe did his thing. And I think what it made people realize is like, wow, here's three guys that are serious players, but at the same time they're goofy as hell. But the song is good, and it's a song, and I think that's why people gravitated towards it, and that's why when I announced the album on July 5th, hey, it's out, I was getting tons of people saying, okay, where do I sign a check to? Who do I make a payment to? I'm like, right here. And it's a blast. It really is. This is my best-selling album. And hands down, this is my best-selling album, and I'm glad because the music's good. And it sounds like a safe statement, but it's the truth, I think. Ivan SDR, my new album, Pantene, Converse. Gotta block the Converse, man. So, thanks so much. Keep buying the album. Keep liking the album. Life is good.